here. Thank you all for coming. I'm excited to see some really wonderful representation, both men and women. Love the inclusion. So we're so thrilled to be able to host this panel. With the interest of time, what I'd like to do is introduce each panelist, but have you talk about yourself. Sorry about the long intro on me. I didn't know she was going to do that. But yes, I have a degree in math, so it makes sense for me to be in AI and machine learning now. But first I want to introduce you to our first panelist, Yaimei. Yeah. She's a global head of research and technology at Morgan Stanley. So thank you for joining us. Maybe you want to say a few words about yourself?
I'm going to keep it really brief because I don't want to compete with you very long.
I had nothing to do with that. So, I'm so sorry.
No, you're not sorry. You're great.
Oh, thank you.
My name is Inigo. I'm the global head of Morgan Stanley Research Technology. So what my team does is really work with our research analysts very closely to generate insight, leveraging machine learning and the data. That's what we do. Of course, being research house, what we also do is we're publishing out what we have done. So we also have a platform that allows our analysts to write the research report, publishing to our client, and then we will then measure the impact of our research. So that's what we do at a high level.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Our next panelist is Erin Liddell. She's our chief machine learning scientist at H2O.ai. She works on H2O AutoML. So maybe a few words from you and your background.
Okay. So, yeah, well, you said most of my H2O duties. Yes, I lead the H2O AutoML team, which is the AutoML component in the open source H2O package. And then outside of H2O, I do a few things. So there's two groups that I'm associated with. So one is called Women in Machine Learning and Data Science. Woohoo! Oh. Woohoo! Oh. Some people may have heard of that. Okay, we have a New York chapter. If you don't know about it, join it. You know, men and women both are invited to our events. We have women speakers on machine learning topics. And New York, I think, is our second biggest group worldwide. We have about 75 chapters. So. Wow. Check it out. And then another group called R Ladies, if you like R. Any R people? Okay. Yeah. There's also Pi Ladies. That's cool, too.
That's cool.
It's all right. No, I like I do Python and R, so I just happen to love R just a slight bit more. But, yeah, that's another group. They have a New York chapter, R Ladies. Check it out.
Thank you, Erin. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Our next panelist is Josie Williams. She's a research technology assistant at NYU Medical Center. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, like she said, I'm Josie. I'm a recent college graduate from NYU, and right now I'm working with the NYU Medical Center with a team who wants to implement machine learning into healthcare with the goal of predicting diseases, especially kidney disease and renal failure 2 years in advance. So that's kind of what, in my specific role in that, is just making sure, along with the training and the processing and the gathering of the data, to make sure that it works well for everybody, that the accuracy isn't just well for one subset. You know, it's good for everybody, because everybody gets kidney disease and everybody has renal failure.
Everybody?
Oh. Everybody can have it. Wait a second. My bad. Everyone could. I mean,
could.
Doesn't. Yeah. Most likely not.
Thank you for joining us. So thrilled to have you. New college grad. Love that. And our next finalist is Lil. So I'm going to Lily.
Yes,
right? Lily Valletta.
Valletta.
Mm-hmm. And
it's the capital of Malta.
That's right. I married Valletta, though.
Yes, I've been there.
This is an interactive session. We're going to let you ask questions as well. She's a co-founder and CEO of a group called Cultural Intel and Science?
CN+.
CN+. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about what that is and who you are and what you do.
So my story is really interesting because I am a former corporate executive. I used to say dropout. I guess I'm a graduate. I was at Johnson & Johnson for 10 years.
Wow.
Leading global marketing, so we can compare notes in the world of marketing. And I guess the bug of innovation and being a business owner bit me when I realized that today's shifting demographics mean we need to understand people, data, and insights through a whole new lens. I have coined that as cultural intelligence, which is why our company is called Culture Intel. It's short for cultural intelligence. And our mission in life is to take great tools like H2O, AI, ML, put it to work for us to empower leaders to make better, more inclusive decisions. So to put that in perspective, we are helping medical institutions like Harvard Medical School and the Cleveland Clinic better understand patient journeys and know what are the drivers and barriers to care and how are they different by ethnicity and by gender, or even big tech giants like Google, helping them understand what is keeping women engaged or not in a career in tech. So we'll talk about it a little bit more, but I guess we are the cultural intelligence company based here in New York with offices in Latin America, Minneapolis, and LA.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. And what we want to talk about today, and we're going to open it up for questions as well, is really talk about some of the challenges of kind of diversity, inclusion, that are continuously crop up, right? So I've been in the industry, in the tech industry for 30 plus years. I graduated when women were at all-time peak of computer science in terms of percentages, and it's significantly dropped in the last 30 years, year over year. Maybe coming back a little bit now, but there is an issue, and I love to see the brain power here. So I'm not sure everyone has the answers, but just throwing it out to the panelists here, like, what do you think the main issues are about bringing more diversity into technology, into financial services? What do you guys see that as?
Yeah, I can start a little bit because I have a 18-year-old daughter, and she happened to be in computer science, so all my credit she went to. So what she told me was she was actually one of the maybe the only person in her class that went into computer science or technology in general. So the problem, she told me, and I see that as well, is the girls in high school or middle school, number one is they're not exposed to technology a lot, providing in this country, high school or middle school. And two is, the guys is always perceived to be more techy, or they can be more nerdy. But the girls, you don't want to be perceived as that nerdy girl, right? So I think that's, to me, is a culture problem.
It's a cultural problem, yeah.
So I came from China many years ago, and lots of my colleagues, they come from India or Eastern Europe. To my age, back then, it was like, if you can get into science, you are super smart, right? That's why you see many people in the science and technology field from China, India, or Middle East. A lot of women are from those. So I think there is a fundamental culture.
In the U.S., maybe?
In the U.S.
In the U.S., okay.
Yes.
So Josie, you're a new college grad. Just always curious, because I have a 20-year-old daughter that's also like, well, no, I can't do math. It's too hard. Yeah. That's what she's been told, right? But she's good at it. So what are your experiences?
My experience, my mom is also in tech, so like she kind of really pushed me to take that programming class, even though I was like, no, I can't do it, it's too hard. But that also is kind of representation, I feel like, would also help people, like, is one of the reasons why people aren't in the, the field that they're into, like the computer science field, mostly just because, like, you don't see that role model, you don't see yourself, you can't envision yourself in that role.
Can I ask you what your degree is in?
Yeah, computer science.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I would see.
That's fantastic.
But I feel like I was quite lucky because I feel at NYU specifically, there was like a 40-60%, so like 40% were female and 60% were male. So like I feel like that might not be the norm, but like I definitely felt like I was able to connect with like-minded people.
Yeah, and so then Erin, you get into the workplace, and and you're leading these amazing groups of women and diversity across the world, actually. And so what do you see the main challenges? Like when you get into the workplace, you get out of academia, you enter into a Morgan Stanley or an H2O even. Like, where do you see the main challenges of, being part of this whole, like, there's a revolution underway with AI. Like, what do you see as the key challenges for women?
Yeah, so that's a good question because there's a lot of focus on like what is the pipeline issue, which we just talked about. But there's also, I think more of the problem is a retention issue, and there's a lot of women who, you know, make it through all these hurdles and they get into tech and then they leave because it's not a pleasant environment at all times. It is a cultural thing at each company, and I think different companies and even teams within companies have very different experiences for women. Like if you're in an all-male team, it's hard, and I've been that person before, and most of the time you don't notice it, and then there's certain things where you're like,
you walk into that room and you're the only female out of 30 or 40.
There's some conversation that you're just not getting or something like that. But yeah, I think the two issues are retention and promotion as well. So
I agree.
We see now a lot of women getting into tech, but you don't see them as much
staying
or being promoted.
So now you've just joined tech, right? Kind of like coming
Yeah,
from Johnson & Johnson.
Exactly. I want to give you, like, I have this weird journey, but it's a great blessing because I'm the daughter of two engineers. My mom was the only female in her engineering class when she graduated as a chemical engineer back in the 60s. So I grew up watching these equal roles, but I wanted to be the girl in business. So I ended up being the finance person that then gets the MBA, and now I'm having to catch up later in my career journey through postgraduate work and surrounding myself with people smarter than me, like all of you. But it's okay because at the end of the day, I think people need to understand that a career in technology is not necessarily how you start, because as we're seeing, you can fall off the cliff at the very beginning. But it's realizing that that is going to continue to give you an edge no matter what position or industry you're sitting in. Healthcare, finance, marketing, everything is tech-enabled. So if you don't know technology, you are doomed. And that's what I had to learn. Seriously, it's everything.
First I'm going to have kidney disease, then I'm doomed.
I keep telling people, and I say this respectfully, AI, ML, it's awesome. There's all these cool things that I myself have had to learn in the last 3 years, literally. But it's like somebody in the workplace today not knowing how to use Microsoft Word. We're going to have to like start showing the younger generations that this is the way of the future for making decisions, whether you are a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or a hardcore tech innovator. You are going to have to learn how to do this. So I think the fear out of it, it's going to have to be repackaged so that it's not just one path that takes you there. It is an enabler for you to be the best version of you, regardless of the industry.
Well, so you and I have a flipped career. I started in math and computer science, and I went into
I went
marketing.
the other way around.
You're going the other way around.
Yes.
But you're right. I mean, if you have the technology background, you have a leg up on everybody else. And in finance, in the financial services sector, and in particular maybe Morgan Stanley, tell me your experiences of how it's been like to, maybe you don't see it, or do you see it? Do you have any kind of bias there, or do you feel fairness and equality?
I think we see the same thing, that women come into finance or technology rather, and then some of them, I say maybe more of them tend to gravitate to non-tech role, for example, BA, project manager, product manager. If you look at the majority of those roles are women. The men, they kept going on to be more technical, right? They focus on that. So one of the things we do now is we realize you need a few things. Number one, you have to have a role model. Right? If you look up there, there's no women, it's all guy. Where am I going to get there, right? So you got to have a role model up there. And number two is you need to have a supporting network. It's like, I want to get there, but how am I going to get there? So we come up, we have a mentoring program, we do coaching, sponsoring, all of that. So we're trying to consciously help women to not only encourage them to say, you can get there, but we're trying to help them to get there. I think it's not like, we want to get more women into technology, more women get promoted. Just the wishful thinking is not enough. I think we need to have a concrete
That's what
plan.
Erin's saying, right?
We need to
Wishful
have a
thinking
plan.
is not enough.
We need to have a plan to
We
get
each need a
people out
plan.
there.
So every
Yes.
company that's represented in this room needs to have
Right.
a plan.
Yeah, and Morgan Stanley has this very big, successful women in technology network.
Yeah.
We have so many different activities, a program we run, and then we have a few other to supplement that. I think it's working, but are we there? I think we still have work to do. Absolutely.
So I was meeting with another one of our H2O's customers in the Bay Area yesterday, and it's actually Franklin Templeton, and the head of machine learning and data science is female, and she's like, if we don't bring diversity of opinion and looking at all sides of the questions into machine learning, where would we put it? So I wanted to see, I mean, I thought that was, you know, we kind of know that. It's that diversity of opinion that really absolutely matters. How would that play out in your roles?
I have an example, like, this is such a crazy story, but the reason why I ended up having this flip and totally like go the tech entrepreneur route was because there was 1 year, 4 years ago, when in 2 phone calls, I lost 60% of our revenues as a business. And I said, I refuse to be a freaking, I use another word, services company. We have to productize what we do in cultural intelligence. Found an amazing chief data officer guy, nothing against the guys. He was amazing, he was brilliant. Otherwise, a product wouldn't exist. But it wasn't until he started working with us and our team with this inclusion lens that the way we started training and designing our models was able to have an output that was culturally inclusive in the way we were generating now these insights for big Fortune 500s as clients. So it's that diversity of thought, but we needed each other. I couldn't have done it without Pat. Pat wouldn't have thought about it without us. So that is that diversity of thought in rethinking how do we make this algorithm self-identify and tag people in a certain way so I can see insight by ethnicity and by gender in a way that nobody else is doing. So that's why it's in the thinking. It's
in
not
the thinking.
just inclusion for the sake of inclusion.
No, it's for the thinking.
It's the
behind
thinking,
it.
but here's the catch, and this is culture and inclusion by design. It will never work if you have a 50-50 split, black and brown, women, men. If the environment is not allowing for you to even bring up the challenge in the room, then you can have all the color in the room. You're not going to get the full benefit of the colorful room you have. So it's inclusion by design in how you brainstorm, when and where it happens, that gets the best out of people's heads. Otherwise, if the best brainstorming is happening at 9 p.m. in the bar across the street that I didn't get to go to, then you're going to miss out on my ideas. So it's by design.
So I was going to ask actually either Erin or Josie, maybe both of you, is speaking up, right? So you have that voice, it's in your head, you know the answer or you have a thought. Do you keep quiet or do you speak up? I know Erin.
Ingrid knows the answer to this.
You speak up, but sometimes uncomfortably, right?
Yeah, I might be a bit of a thorn, like in people's sides sometimes. Like I'm always the one kind of, well, you're good at this too, actually. I mean, maybe a more delicate thorn, but like and it is kind of a burden. You don't want to always be like that one person that has to say like, well, what about blah, or what about this? And I think like there's a lot of men in the room, like the most useful thing that you can do as an ally is speak up. Like if you notice something, if women are being sort of, you know, not included in some conversation, or you know maybe a woman says something and it doesn't get heard, like to amplify her voice and things like that. I think that's super useful, and you're going to win a lot of friends that way.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
And what about you?
I am very much in the same vein. I feel like if your intentions are in the right place, then you have the right and sometimes the obligation to speak up, because like you're going to benefit everybody by speaking up and kind of sharing your opinion and your voice. So there's no need to like hold that
And there's
back.
no good or bad, right?
Like as long as you believe that you're doing, like you have like good intentions and like you know that it's a valid point, then I feel like there should be no discussion about what.
And what about at Morgan Stanley? Is that similar? Can you speak up and be heard?
Yeah, I think we are actually pretty open in terms of encourage people to speak up. I don't think it's a culture that preventing people to be to speak up. I think it's more of women or diverse people. We tend to maybe not confident enough. I think in a big men setting, so you literally think, okay, I'm not good enough, but
well, you said it. You said I'm not smart enough like the people in the room. I almost stopped you there.
Exactly. Right.
You said it, and that's like what you're thinking. So you can't say that.
So lesson learned.
I'm going to mentor you.
You cannot go into a room.
We do it to ourselves.
We do it to ourselves.
Right. You cannot go into a room and think of, okay, I'm not good enough. You have to think about everybody's good at something. They may be better than me in many different things, but I am actually good at a few things.
Yeah.
Better than them. So you will speak up when you think you're really good.
I'm going to share, this is such a stupid idea, but
no, this is, here's an idea. Simple. Here's an idea.
Keep it simple, stupid is the KISS method.
Okay, that's fine.
Because I was actually, this was like an aha moment, a moment of brilliance that I had advising somebody. I was with a group of technologists and engineers in the Middle East 2 years ago. And I remember this one guy, after this chat we had kind of like this, he approached me. I wanted to like hug him and take a picture and put a poster of him. Because he said, Lily, I have these amazing female engineers in my team. This is in Bahrain, by the way, where there's more female engineers than men graduating out of college today. This is like amazing.
Let's go bring them here.
But I know, I bring them here. But he was telling me, he's like, I know they're brilliant. Sometimes I get to catch up with them out of the room, but when we are in meetings, I never get their ideas. And I asked him, how are you doing your meetings? And is this like free-for-all, talk, opinions, you know, you're just kind of winging it, right? It's very loud. And I said, have you tried the KISS method of the Post-it note brainstorming?
Yeah.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. So it's sometimes, again, by design, forcing a quiet moment where all of a sudden you're letting room for these brains to breathe, to put stuff down before just or allowing everyone to just jump on each other. We did follow up afterwards, and it was a world's change, and finally he was getting stuff out because he was allowing the moment for everyone to reflect, write it down, and then share, instead of assuming all the ladies are just going to jump in. So sometimes it's being intentional, because as confident as we may be here, sassy and loud, not everybody's like that, and we gotta adjust. That's what an inclusive environment is all about.
That's
different methods.
That's very true. Another thing is also, you know, for people that's probably more confident or men in the room, consciously pick out, you know, whether it's women or even men, people that are less confident, give them opportunity to say, hey, what do you think of X? Have them to speak up. And encourage
call
them
them
to
out.
speak up.
Right? In a nice way.
Yeah, call them out.
What's your opinion?
Exactly.
You
When
look
they
like
say
you like have an idea here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So really pull them out, and then back to mentoring. And so you were talking about promotions and women leaving the workforce, right? And there's a lot of reasons why, right? It's hard to juggle a family. I get that. I have 4 kids. I did it. But it's not for everyone, and it's tough, right? So on the mentoring scale, Erin, I was just looking at you. Like, you must get this question a lot with the women's groups that you're leading. Like, what do you advise them?
Like people looking for mentors and how to, well, we definitely get like a lot of people looking for mentors and not as many people coming forward to say, hey, I would like to mentor somebody like that. So I think my advice on that is try to not make it such a formal thing. Like,
agreed.
Like, will you be my mentor? Like, sign here and like we're, you know,
that doesn't work.
Agreement. Meet every once a month, you know. So try to just look for more casual mentoring.
A quick conversation, even.
I mean, so my group has a Slack group basically, and so when I think about mentoring, I think, you know, just going on the Slack and asking a question and getting an answer. That's mentoring, and it doesn't have to be, you know, a mentor-mentee relationship. It's like little pieces of advice from a lot of people. So, or it could just be on Twitter, like making a comment and, you know, asking for help or something like that. It doesn't have to be you know, what you would typically think of. I don't know what people think of, like meeting for coffee every now and then. That's great too if you can get that.
If you can spare the time, right?
Yeah.
But also just, so for me, I'm a lot in the spotlight in these events. So a lot of people ask me personally to be their mentor, but
Oh, that's why I'm asking. How's it
but I
going
don't
for
have
you?
time to do that for everybody. So I think, you know, you see a person, you're like, oh, that person could be a mentor, but also just look at your peers, and you're going to have a lot more success just asking people sort of either on your level or even, you know, just people that you don't see in the spotlight, but just, you know, I think we could all do a lot more peer mentoring, because everybody has something to offer somebody else, whether or not, like whatever the rank, you know, however people perceive themselves as like higher or lower.
Right.
I would just add one thing to what you just said, which is absolutely right, is that you don't need to have one mentor, but what you do is, I think the reason you want a mentor is you want to get better. But think about what you want to get better. Is the public speaking? Is it your data science skill? Or is your management skill? So you watch people actually close to you say, oh my God, that person's communication skill is top notch. Go to the person to say, hey, how do you do that? Right? You don't need to say, can you be my mentor? Just say, how do you do that?
Ask one question.
Ask that question.
Just
They're
one
going to
question.
tell you, well, you know, I'm actually not good at that. I do a lot of prep. You know, they'll
Right.
tell you that. Just pick up that
That's
one
a great
thing
piece of
you want to
advice.
learn from that person. Go to ask.
And just observe, right? Because if you observe people that are
Exactly.
successful in various
build a-
environments, find out what it was or what it is that they're doing.
and you can build a relationship too from
Absolutely.
that going on.
That's a great piece of, that's really good.
Thank you.
I'm going to use that.
And Ingrid, can I want
Sure.
to throw like an accountability challenge to everyone here, because you can hear us talk about inclusion and all of that. Every single person in this room has the responsibility and opportunity to mentor and be mentored.
Absolutely.
And it's a decision, like walking up and asking the question. And I always say, and I tell this to a lot of the corporate CEOs that maybe I have the pleasure of talking to, and I say, well, how do we do this? I'm like, it starts with you. When was the last time you spoke to a young group of high school students about how cool technology is? And if the answer is no, don't feel bad. That means all of us collectively are part of this inclusion dilemma or gap. So it really starts with us. You can wait for Morgan Stanley to figure out the perfect policy or H2O to have the perfect mentoring program, but it starts with us. Like those of us, and I'm going to pick on my sister here, all those of us that are like of minority backgrounds where our kids don't even see us in the picture. It starts with us showing up into their schools. And that is how you start filling those gaps. So it's kind of like, that's how you make a difference. And
just
it's
kinda-
intentional.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Just to piggyback on everybody's points, just in the process of getting a mentor, like I feel like never stop talking about your projects or your interests, like ever. Like always be open about it, always be talking about it, because people are much nicer than you think they are, and they're much more willing to help
They
than
are.
they are. Yeah, and like I've received a lot of no's before I was able to meet my mentors, and they've been the wind beneath my wings. So it's like never be afraid just to like get out there, and even if they are too busy, you know, like they have a lot of people, it's like that doesn't mean that you can't find another person or they can't connect you with somebody. And so like just always keeping that in mind.
But I think mentoring applies not just to women and inclusion.
Yes.
It's everybody in this room. We're always lifelong learners, hopefully, right? Especially if you're in AI machine learning right now. I mean, you're learning fast. And what I think we also need to pass on to everybody in the audience is you can be a mentor, you can be a mentee. I mean, I have mentees that are actually very high-level senior people in various companies, but they call me and say, I have this dilemma, I need some advice. And it's just a sounding board. It's more of that one question to ask people. So with that one question, I wanted to see if there were any questions in the audience. Yes, Elena?
Can we talk about imposter syndrome? So this is something everybody's shaking their head, right? So that idea that, you know, you've got where you are and everybody's here and the panel is so accomplished. But that little voice in your head that says, hey, I'm going to get found out soon, and
Oh, I have that.
yeah, like,
I'm not an engineer. I'm not an engineer.
that is something that's kind
Seriously.
of, speaks to
Yeah.
the gender barrier.
Yeah.
But so the question is, what about the imposter syndrome? How do you deal with it? The little voice in your head that says, "I'm going to be found out. They're gonna find out that I don't know anything." I had that when I graduated college. I said, "They're going to fire me within 3 weeks because I know nothing. I know nothing." And I didn't get fired.
And that speaks to women applying for jobs and saying, okay, well, I'm not actually qualified for this job description.
They always say that, and
Yeah.
drives me nuts. Okay, so women always say, "I'm not qualified, so therefore I'm not going to apply, so therefore. My piece of advice, since I know you asked the panel and I want to answer, I mean, you guys can all answer too, but really, what's the worst thing that can happen? If you don't try, you haven't tried, right? So if you try and you find out that you're not qualified, by the way, you're always qualified. Nobody here in this, I mean, everybody can do anything. So you have to try, and you have to, how I deal with it is, what's the worst thing that can happen? I have to go look for another job. I have to move. I have to find another group, whatever. The worst thing isn't you're going to die tomorrow of kidney disease. The worst thing is, that you just have to go move on and go do something new. But that's how I deal with it. I always ask myself, and my team, some of my team is here, that they know, what's the worst thing that can happen? Life goes on, and you can deal with it. There's a lot more worse things that can happen than what's happening in your career at the moment, right? So any other thoughts on, how do you guys deal with, do you have that imposter syndrome? And by the way, I think men have it too.
Yeah.
Yes?
Go ahead.
There's a brave soul.
Tell us, how do you deal with that?
I tell my kids that because they feel it a lot, sorry. I tell my kids because they feel it a lot. My daughter's 20 and in college and wondering what is she good at, and my son's thinking about what school, he's a senior. And I just tell them that you're supposed to be an imposter. I mean, that's where we're all supposed to be. That's what means you're growing. There's always stuff to learn.
True. Yeah.
Right? So you go in with what you have, and you should always feel like you're not good enough because
You should strive. Yeah. You should
and,
strive.
and everyone's in that position, and they shouldn't feel different. My daughter's asking me, what should be on a resume? I'm like, you're 20. There shouldn't be anything on your resume. You're a counselor to summer camp. That's great. You showed some responsibility. Now move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, great advice. Any other piece of advice here in the front of the room?
Yeah, I would say that definitely everybody has a very strong point, right? You have to identify what you're really good at. Once you find that, you should be able to say, I'm actually really bad at that, right? Because you are, say, you're data scientist, you're best data scientist, but hey, your friends play awesome piano. You can say, I don't play piano. Who cares? I just don't, right? But I think you need to make something to make you very confident. Otherwise, if you think you're bad at everything, that's pretty bad, right? So find that, and then let's say if somebody, they say, hey, do you know machine learning? Yeah, I do. What can you do? Do you know R and Python? I know Python, right? And then maybe you in your heart you go, well, I actually know a little bit. Guess what? If you interview a job, when you go back, just do more Python, right? So I think it's okay. Nobody's going to know everything. Nobody's going to get at everything. But if you said you know something, if you don't think you know enough, go back to learn more. We do that all the time. We keep on learning. Nothing wrong with that, I would say. But you have to find a way to make you confident.
More questions from the audience.
I just want to.
Go ahead.
Just backing off of your confidence and making sure you have that. It's they picked you for a reason. If you have the position, there's something they saw in you that meant either that you could grow or that you had the skills already. Yeah. So just having that, just not doubting yourself so much, but always having that curiosity to learn more, I feel is a killer combination.
Sounds like learning is kind of the center point here. Is keep learning.
Yeah, keep learning.
Next question. Yes.
So I wanted to ask a question about how women deal with when you have an insecurity about a weakness that you might have. We all have strengths, and the point that you made about we know what our strengths are, but then when we feel like our weaknesses are exposed, it feels like an imposter syndrome type of thing. So. And I know that for myself, too, I deal with those types of issues as well. It's very common, and technology is increasing at such a fast pace that it's like we all have to realize that we're always going to be learning anyway.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what are some tips that you have for really anybody that is dealing with those types of emotions to grow and to be confident in their abilities?
So there's always going to be somebody that objectively, looking at the what and the facts, is going to have either a fancier degree or a better university or more like masters and PhDs than you, yada, yada, yada. And you can like psych yourself to death by doing that comparison on what others have that you may not have. However, and this is what is also part of this cultural intelligence thing, in my humble opinion, the superpower that women hold, and not to leave the guys aside, we all do as humans, is the why you are doing what you're doing to begin with. What is that passion and power that moves you beyond the degree, the title, the knowing Python or not? And typically that will be so unique and so powerful that in the darkest moments when I lost 60% of my revenues and all that, the only thing that kept us up and going and forcing innovation was this obsessive focus on becoming the authority in cultural intelligence. So only you know what that is for you. Why are you in this? And once you have clarity of that why, maybe many of you have seen the Simon Sinek Start with the Why. This is the marketer Lily speaking now, where people really buy and believe why you do what you do and not what you do. What you do is degrees and things and languages you know or don't know or fancy schools you went to or not. So if you know what that is, then you will be expressing who you are and your level of passion for the work from a different place. In my case, I am very blunt into saying I have a unique immigrant, bicultural, bilingual advantage that helps me see the world differently, and I'm going to own it. So and for women, same thing. If 80% of purchasing decisions in this world are driven by a woman, then I have the power in my brain and my heart that represents who's going to be likely to be our customer, our user, whatever. So, but you need to know what that is for you and stop just defining yourself by titles and degrees and reframe it with purpose and passion. When preparation and passion meets opportunity, that is success, and you're going to be happy.
I think hard work as well is really important.
Preparation.
Yeah. I think we all have what you're talking about. I mean, we're human. Yeah. That was great advice. I think, you also have to find balance in your life. Mm-hmm. So it's not all work and no play, right? So first thing that came to mind when you said, what do you do to cope with it? It's like I go for a run. So I'm a outdoor runner. I mean, I just go hit the trail, 6 miles, and my head is clear. Right, and it's just amazing what getting outside or doing what makes you happy, whatever it is. Right, it may be playing piano, and I'd love to, but it would it's whatever makes you happy. Use that as your balance from the stressors of that work. I don't know if you have other advice. Like Erin, sounds like you have some. Or?
I would say don't always pick on yourself and look at your weakness. You have to find your strengths. That would be my advice. If you keep on compare your own weakness with other people's strengths, then you're going to be always feeling horrible, right? So,
because there's always somebody better.
Right, yeah. Right.
Skinnier, prettier.
So I was in
the stress of being a woman.
I was in a few different panels, and I looked at people's bio, like, oh my God, I'm on the panel with those people, because they all have a brilliant bio.
Yeah, I read all your bios, and I'm like, oh man, I don't.
So then I have to say, okay, I'm going to ignore who they are. Who cares? I'm going to focus on what I do well. So I just stick on what I do well and what I want to say. Works all the time. I just ignore them. So, seriously. If you keep on thinking about it, oh my gosh, she's a data scientist, or
I know Erin is like, what?
Erin's like the real.
Yeah. We just ignore Erin and we talk about something else.
She went to it. Yeah, she's amazing. Any other questions in the room? Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
Well, we also have the workshop, right?
She has a mic.
More after this one, I'm sorry, but then save it for the drinks.
It sounds like, but we have so much.
Workshop tomorrow.
How late can you guys stay? I'm like, Ian?
The workshop will be until midnight.
5 more minutes, and then we'll do a break, and then drink.
Because you want to do the workshop too, right?
She's the boss.
Right? We're gonna learn because we heard about learning. It's important.
Machine.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and wanted to get your opinion in terms of like what can we do in our corporations or as leaders or in our teams to close this gender gap that we started talking about.
Yeah.
You mentioned that purpose, passion, I think is fantastic. Why is it that there's maybe more men going into like this technical field? Is it because they just pursue that degree and then an example that maybe women tend to do more of the other type of work?
Yeah.
I tend to think that women tend to please more other people and raise their hand to do whatever work needs to be done.
Oh, that's true.
And men, on the other hand, will be like, no, let me stick to maybe where the ROI is, where the benefit is, where the money is. And we as leaders, I think, have a responsibility to how do we make sure that we take care of, like, not killing some opportunities, right? So my question is, what can we do to ensure that as we have a pipeline, get those women more into those technical tracks and not letting them take the crappy work that needs to be done?
Yeah. There was an intervention done at a university, and I should have studied and tell you which one, but you can Google it, that actually tried matching up freshmen in the engineering class with other women from day one. And then they also tried it sophomore year, And for those that started with somebody by their side as the buddy, someone that looks like me, that maybe is already a senior or graduated, there was a 100% retention versus those that didn't, were half dropped off and left. So there is something that is very powerful, and is not just the cute mentoring is important, but this is intentional matching.
Yeah.
Intentional matching, which takes work, but why not? Every corporation is going to have to onboard new hires, whether it is matching them up with somebody in the women's leadership group, BRG, ERG, or making that intentional matching of somebody in the department that is going to be that peer-to-peer from day one, where it's okay to ask the, questions you wouldn't dare to ask anybody else. But that is proven. There is evidence and data that proves that matching increases retention. In this case, it was with college students that completed all the way through, but it has applications in the corporate world too. So that's a little intervention, but it has evidence that it works.
So I don't know, I've led a lot of teams in my career, men and women, and I always hire the best talent. It's like, first I start with the best talent. Who's the best person for the job? I am completely color and gender blind. It's like, are you the best talent? I'm going to put a bet on you, and then I'm going to invest in you, right? So it is interesting that there's quite a few men in my team right now who have little babies, little kids, and they got to leave at 5:30 because they've got to go take care of kids. They've got childcare responsibilities. They've got soccer games to go pick up, and I just like go. We work at a startup, but we work extremely hard, and it's like go. And guess what? They're back online at midnight. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm sleeping then, but they're back online doing what they need to do to catch up. And the women as well, right? We just do what we have to do, but I encourage people to find their balance and find out what they're good at, and then I really want them, to mature to their next level as a leader. My proudest, for me as a leader, I've got a number of CMOs that I have trained in Silicon Valley that I can point to and say, they worked for me, that person worked for me at some significant companies. So for me, my pride is men and women that I've mentored or nurtured to get to that next level is super important. And that's in many different companies. So I think that starts on the daily basis with working with the team. But I think, I just take it actually one step further. There's a conference in our hotel right now, and the CMO there is somebody I recommended for the job. So I'm just thrilled. She's at MuleSoft, Salesforce company. and just thrilled that she made it all the way to the top.
That's awesome.
And it was just, it's incredible. But I think you have to look at, like, how do you help, as a leader, how do you help people get to that next level? But you got to understand what's driving them. So, you might have somebody that's insecure, or somebody that's just learning, just out of school. You've got to, as a leader, you got to know all of that, but always the right talent, the best talent for the job, and help them out as much as you can as a leader. So I don't know. You probably lead a lot of teams too.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with
Just
you.
do that as well.
Yep.
Do we have one more question?
Yeah, over here. So this question is mainly directed towards Lily. So in the discussions around algorithmic bias, there's a lot of discussion now trending towards regulations that will make the consideration of gender and ethnicity in the models basically not illegal, but to take those considerations out to ensure like a colorblind or gender neutral result. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you think it will specifically affect your work in cultural intelligence?
So interesting. I'm going to draw a healthcare parallel. You'll be proud of this. Clinical trials is what it's used to test, of course, a compound before it hits the market. Kind of like when you are developing an algorithm, training it, playing with it, is for it to hopefully turn into a thing that the world can use. Clinical trials cannot prove if a drug is effective unless the pool of patients that it was tested on is representative of the patients that it's supposed to serve, aka the users that it's supposed to serve. Still to this day, less than 5% of clinical trial participants in America are black or brown, even though we are 40% of the population. Therefore, most drugs that are out in the market, we really don't know if they work on all patients. And you would think, oh my gosh, how is this even possible? I feel like this is like a 60 minutes that needs to be done. Probably it will be one day. It will not change behavior of those designing the trials or the studies until the FDA halts the approval of a multi-billion-dollar drug because of that lack of representation. So I would love to be hopeful and optimistic that we can leapfrog healthcare and get this right in the world of data, but similarly, there are implications on the outcome and the people that this thing are meant to serve if we're not inclusive upstream. I tend to be the free enterprise, let people make the right decisions because they know they have to, but unfortunately there are times when regulation, and it's not until recently with GDPR and things like that, that we are looking at data as a new asset class that needs to be regulated, and therefore things like that put into the system for the right behavior to come out on the other end. But if we haven't done it yet, and the FDA is not doing it for people's lives that are at stake, I think it's optimistic to assume we'll get there with data, but I think it's a long shot. There's a lot of talk around it. It's the right thing to do. But I think an inclusive approach and culturally intelligent approach is needed in everything because we live in a diverse, highly dynamic, highly connected society. And without that, your story and your output is incomplete.
All right, with that, fantastic. I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank our panelists. They're amazing. I'm proud to be up here with all of you and proud to have met you all. Come to H2O World. We're going to do a women and inclusion panel at H2O World, October 22nd in New York at Hilton Midtown, which is right around here somewhere. So we'd love to have you. We are going to send you a code so you can get a complimentary pass to get into the conference. It will be amazing. You'll hear from Erin's going to speak around AutoML. And we're going to have a number of use cases from financial services, customers, healthcare, telcos, and so forth, insurance companies, and so forth, talk about what they're doing with machine learning and AI. So now I'm going to turn it over to...